Welcome to Topography, sponsored by Matt Miller and viewers like you. In this first episode, what we're going to do is we're going to look at maps and then positioning and little tricks that we can do with the maps and so that we can get some advantages. In the future, I will have some gameplay for you all to see. Preferably just walking out a play session or a game in general. Okay, so what I've done is I have a couple of cool stand-ins for you to just sort of look at. My zoom skills on the camera is still moderately okay, as you can see here. So there we go, and you can see I can zoom in on Banshee and zoom back out. Again, thanks again to Mr. Matt Miller for donating the camera. All right, this is the AVX Savage Land map, and we're going to start with this starting area over here. The main reason I'm going to bring up this map is I think it's a map that we're all familiar with, and I think it's a good starting point. But also, I think there's some tricks of the trade still to be addressed on this map. So let's go ahead and do that, shall we? All right, the first thing when we look at the starting areas, and we'll start with this one, is both starting areas shrink the map. Mainly this one here, when we look at it, we're directly facing the other starting area, and we have all this out here to sort of play with. But our opponent has less map to navigate, as we do have less map to navigate to get directly to our opponents. That's why this water is really good, because if you have melee characters, it forces them back to the center of the map. Melee characters that don't fly. If your character ignores hindering or flies or phases or anything like that, then this water is inconsequential. But when we look at this first starting area, we can see again the standard hindering terrain, and that's nice. And we have directly outside, we have these two additional pieces of elevated terrain. Now, if you don't look closely, you'll think that elevated terrain is part of your starting area, and it really isn't. So let me try to do my best to zoom in here. Again, like I said, this is the first episode of this. Cameraman, I am not so much, so just bear with me. All right, so just sort of ignore where the characters are right now for positioning. We're going to get back to that, but the thing you can see is having this little area here and here, it allows for some additional shenanigans that we'll get into a bit later. But overall, we're looking at typically, for a square starting area, a standard size starting area. At the same time, if we're going to be honest, we are getting less squares than we do in a standard starting area, just because we're in that square starting area. So that's the first thing. All right, so let's zip over to the other starting area, shall we? We're just going to zoom in on that. All right. Now the second starting area, as you can see, it is just our standard square is right here. And then we have less elevated next to it. Okay, so we have these 3 squares of elevation 2 right next to it, and that's pretty much it. Now, this can be a good thing or a bad thing. If you're looking for extended scope to, put your sniper up on, this starting area is really bad. Okay, now, at the other end, if you are looking to, get off of elevation 2 as quickly as possible, because you have something like the Unspoken, who has a benefit when he's on lowest elevation of having stealth, then yeah, this could be a good thing, because it means it's less space that you have to navigate just in case your opponent has hypermobility and is able to get to the other side of the field very quickly. So that's just something to think about. All right. Now let's zoom back out and sort of try to get the whole map in view. or as much of the map as possible. And this is one thing I do actually like about this camera, is that my previous setups, I couldn't even get this much of the map in. And as it stands now, like with this shot here, I literally have about 90% of the map in view. It's just the fringe edges that I don't really have. And I'm betting if I play with this in the future a little bit more, I can get all of it. Okay, so you might be saying, all right, Dark Logos, why is Tiamat, Absorbing Man, Speed Demon, and Banshee on the field? Well, they're there primarily just to fill generic roles, not necessarily for their own stats or whatnot. Okay, so let's first start off with tips and tricks for this map. Why are you picking this map? Well, first off, if we look at the other starting area over here, there's some cool things that we can see that we can get some good early advantages on, and I'm going to just sort of zoom in on parts of them and do it like that. All right, first off, if we're looking at our combat area, this square right here is very, very important. This little square of hindering terrain. It's immediately outside of the starting area. It allows you to post up. It allows you also, so if you have like anybody that is stealth or whatever, you can put two objects here and put your buffer, probber, whatever guy, or effect person that can be stealth or not right there. That's really good. But this little patch here allows you to have a forward position that you're able to cover a good amount of the approach vector coming in towards you. The water is going to slow down anybody that has, melee capabilities that can't fly. So you should be able to poach off a lot of problems before they come about. Okay. The next thing is, when we look at this map, is the midfield, the actual forward midfield where Banshee is at. So I'm going to zoom in on that location right there, and you're going to notice some interesting things. Okay, first off, because the elevation is really like forming a direct triangle of the two starting areas, you're able to do something very, very, very important. Is that if I move Banshee over one square, you are able to draw lines of fire to the other elevations. And that's key if your opponent decides to sort of stay in that starting area. So if you have any sort of sniper figure, or decent range figure like Banshee, and that has running shot and flight, and you're just like, bam, there we go, running shot, and I'm just going to shoot you from way out. Okay, so that's the first thing that becomes very obvious when we're looking at this position. The second thing that comes out, and it gives a lot more favor to this starting area over here. If you can see where Absorbing Man is at, as I fully zoom in, and I'm going to just move up just slightly, you're going to see where Absorbing Man is at right here. Well, Absorbing Man being right here has a great advantage, because this elevation is going to protect him from being shot by Banshee. He won't be able to make a direct line of fire unless he drops down elevation. So if you need somebody to either be posted up in a sniper position that's also protected from other, elevated snipers, then this little corner right here is really, really good for doing that. Okay. The biggest thing that I would say definitely when we're sort of coming back to this midfield area is that characters like Speed Demon and Wizard, really hypersonic speed characters, really enjoy that piece of terrain. So let me sort of track with you as best I can, and I need to zoom out. Okay, all right. So you have a character like Wizard that can, I think Yeah, Wizard can ignore like elevation and stuff like that. I have Speed Demon. I don't have actual Wizard, and he ignores everything but hindering. So you have Wizard, and Wizard can move out and hit somebody here, and then move over to the side to make it so that they can't draw line of fire. Or let's say my attacker is down here, Wizard comes back from his starting area, zips out, hits, and then moves up onto elevated in like a center square. Hopefully all of that is visible. Okay, so when we do something like that, if we're dealing again with like a non-flyer shooter, no one can really retaliate against Wizard, and he's completely safe in his placement. And a lot of people forget, like, hey, unless you have like improved targeting, ignores elevation terrain, you know, if you're a hypersonic speeder, then, you know, going into a square of elevation that's, you know, a couple of squares in deep is really good for you. All right. The other thing is that if you're not on the rim, you can't be drawing line of fire to on people on the first elevation. So those are some big things. Now let's go to the other starting area where Tiamat is at. And just like how I was saying on the other side of the map, like, okay, we have that forward square of hindering terrain that's really great. We have this square of hindering terrain right here, which can be good or bad depending on your game effects that you have in play. If you have a character that gets a bonus, you know, from being in hindering terrain or printed hindering terrain, then yes, having it close to the starting area is great. But being able to move out, come down out of elevation, and again, you do have to land in that square. You have to go through that square if you don't fly, and then immediately have a view out to most of the map is a good position. It's also would allow you, if you wanted to fall back one more square. Again, it's best if you had an ability that allowed you to ignore hindering terrain for line of fire, or just ignore hindering terrain, period. But if you're able to do that, then you have some distinct advantages that pop up. Advantage number one is just how the water protects the other piece of hindering terrain spot that I pointed to you earlier. This water breaks it up here. But the big difference is that if your opponent approaches from this vector in this area here, there's this clear terrain right in there that would allow your melee attackers to intercept. And that's that intercept vector that you really need to be mindful of, because the other side of the field really doesn't have it in trying to have a forward position. So if you're trying to play a little bit more turtle and a little bit more like, hey, you're going to come to me, but I'm going to like beat you up slowly, then this side of the field plays out a lot better. Also, if you're on a team that also values having water terrain a lot closer and in a safer position, it's about equal from both sides of the map. But in the way I'm just sort of looking at the map and way it's designed, you do have a little bit more advantage on this side where the AVX is printed. Just slightly, not by much. Yep, again, getting used to having a tripod in play. I apologize for that misstep. Okay, so overall, I'm hoping that you can see just with the map in general that we have a lot of distinct advantages when playing this map. Not only that, if we just briefly talk about the water element, I know that there are characters that get great bonuses when in the water or have access to, like, hey, I have stealth or regen or whatever else in water. Now, most of those characters, you're going to pick a map with more water. But if you just need water for general effects, such as like, hey, I'm able to draw line of fire through water terrain, then this map is a really good map and would allow you to diversify and have other elements and not go all in on, hey, I have to have everyone with a dolphin symbol or a water power or something like that. So those are some things that I just want you to think about. Again, I'd like to thank you all for watching the first episode of Topography. If you want to produce music for this show, let me know. This will also be going on the Starting Over podcast channel. I'm not going to make a new channel, as you all can see. But if you want to make a music intro for this, just so that everyone's aware of what's going on, then feel free, hit me up. Mr. Greg Place is definitely right now the official intro guy for Starting Over podcast for right now, for at least another 10 to 15 episodes. And if you even want to do the ending song for Starting Over podcast, let me know. That's open at this time as well. So if you want to do the intro or closer for Topography or the closer for Starting Over podcast, let me know. Also, if you have a shirt idea, let me know, and then I will go on